Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're talking all about intermittent fasting. I know a lot of you out there are curious about IF, so we're going to try to unpack it all. It's gotten so popular for weight loss, and I think it's interesting because it doesn't seem to be about changing what you eat drastically, but more about when you eat.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
It's all about these cycles of eating and not eating. So fasting, basically giving your body a break from digestion for an extended period of time.
Okay, so instead of counting calories or cutting out food groups entirely, we're kind of focusing on meal timing. So what are some ways people do that? What are the different methods people try?
Well, one of the most popular ones, and
Yeah.
one that's, I think really good for beginners, is the 168 method. So you're fasting for 16 hours of the day, and then you have an 8-hour window to eat.
So someone could skip breakfast and then have lunch as their first meal and then, finish dinner by 8 p.m. or something. Would that work?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's a very common way that people do the 168 method. Obviously, you can adjust the eating window to fit your schedule and all that, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the basic idea.
I see. So it's flexible. There's some, room to work with there. What about, are there other methods besides the 168?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's the 5.2 method where you eat normally for 5 days a week, and then you restrict calories to 500 or 600 for 2 non-consecutive days. And then there's alternate day fasting. So that's where you're switching between a day of eating normally and then a day of either fasting completely or having a very, very low calorie intake.
Wow, there are a lot of options, it seems like. Something for everybody, maybe?
Yeah.
So let's get into why it works. Why is IF so effective for weight loss?
Well, I think the science behind it is really fascinating because it all comes down to how it shifts our metabolism. Because when we eat, our bodies break down that food into glucose,
Mm,
which is what our cells use for energy.
right, that makes sense. But what happens when we fast?
When you fast and those glucose stores are depleted, your body has to find another energy source,
Hmm?
right? So that's when it starts breaking down stored fat. It breaks down stored fat into molecules called fatty acids, and then those fatty acids can be used as fuel by the body.
So it's like our body's saying, okay, the sugar's gone, time to tap into those reserves. I can see how that would lead to weight loss, especially, that stubborn belly fat that people struggle with.
Yeah, precisely. And what's really interesting is that IF doesn't just help with, shedding pounds. There's a whole range of health benefits as well.
Really? That's fascinating. What else can IF do for us?
One thing is, it can actually improve your metabolism over the long term. When you fast, your body becomes more sensitive to insulin, which is the hormone that helps your cells absorb glucose from the bloodstream.
So improved insulin sensitivity. So that means our bodies are better at using glucose for energy and preventing those sugar spikes and crashes. That's got to be good for overall health, right?
Exactly. And improved insulin sensitivity is a huge factor in preventing type 2 diabetes. There's also evidence that IF can have a positive impact on heart health.
Oh, really? In what ways?
Yeah, studies have shown that it can actually reduce blood pressure and cholesterol levels and inflammation, all these different risk factors for heart disease. So it seems to have a really protective effect on the cardiovascular system.
It's like we're seeing a pattern here. It's not just about weight loss. It's about, allowing our bodies to reset and function more efficiently. What other benefits are there?
Well, there's a really interesting area of research that is looking at how IF can actually increase longevity. And this has to do with a process called autophagy.
Autophagy. I've heard that word, but I'm not sure what it means. Can you explain that in simple terms?
Sure, basically autophagy is your body's way of cleaning house at a cellular level.
Hmm.
So during fasting, your cells actually start breaking down and recycling old and damaged components.
It's like a cellular spring cleaning.
Exactly. So this process of cleaning up all this cellular debris um, is thought to protect against age-related diseases and promote overall cellular health. It's like giving your cells a chance to renew themselves.
This is also interesting. It seems like IF could be a real game changer in a lot of different ways for our health, but, I'm sure some listeners are wondering about the more practical side of things.
Right. Yeah. There are definitely some things that can help people, get started with IF successfully and avoid some of the common pitfalls.
Okay. So for someone who's intrigued and they want to try it out, what's the first step? What's the most important thing to keep in mind?
Well, I think the most important thing is to start slowly. I know it can be tempting to just jump into a really long fasting window, but easing into it is going to make the transition so much smoother.
That makes sense. So instead of diving headfirst into a 16-hour fast, maybe start with 12 and then just gradually increase the duration as your body adjusts.
Exactly. And staying hydrated is absolutely crucial. So, drink plenty of water, herbal tea, black coffee, all that stuff can help you feel full and energized during your fasting periods.
So easing in and staying hydrated, what about the food we eat during those eating windows? Any tips there?
Yeah, it's all about focusing on, nutrient-dense foods that are really going to nourish your body after a fast. So you're thinking whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats.
So it's quality over quantity. It's not an excuse to just like binge on junk food.
Exactly. And, another key is consistency. The more you practice IF, the easier it becomes, Your body will kind of get used to that rhythm of eating and fasting.
It's like any new habit, right? It takes time and effort to make it stick.
Yeah.
What about when like life happens and maybe we slip up or our schedule gets thrown off and we, accidentally break a fast? We just throw in the towel.
No, not at all. No, life happens. It's okay if you slip up every now and then. The key is just to, be kind to yourself, get back on track as soon as you can.
I like that it's about progress, not perfection. So we're starting slow, we're staying hydrated, eating nutritious foods, we're being consistent, being kind to ourselves when we stumble. Anything else that people should keep in mind?
I think it's really important to just pay attention to your body and how you're feeling. If you're experiencing like any really extreme discomfort or any negative side effects, adjust your fasting schedule or talk to your doctor.
Safety first. It's always better to err on the side of caution, especially when you're trying something new. Well, this has been a really great overview of like the different types of IF and some key tips to get started.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes down to finding what works for you, for your individual needs, your lifestyle. It's just one tool in your wellness toolkit, so to speak.
It's about finding something that you can sustain and that makes you feel your best. This has been a great part one. What can listeners look forward to in part two?
Well, in part two, we're going to get even deeper into the science behind all those amazing benefits we talked about. So we'll explore the hormonal shifts that occur during fasting and how they impact everything from fat burning to cellular repair.
That sounds really fascinating. I can't wait to learn more. And for our listeners out there, be sure to come back for part three, where we're going to bust some common myths about IF and address any questions that we haven't covered yet. Welcome back. I'm excited to like really dig into the science behind intermittent fasting. In the last part, we were talking about how IF can kind of shift our metabolism and like force our bodies to burn fat for fuel. Can we unpack that a little more?
Yeah, definitely. So a key player in this whole process is a hormone called insulin. When we eat, our blood sugar levels rise, and that triggers the pancreas to release insulin.
Right. And insulin basically helps our cells absorb that glucose from the bloodstream, right?
Exactly. It acts like a key. It unlocks our cells so they can take in glucose and use it for energy. But when we fast, our blood sugar levels drop.
So our insulin levels drop too. What happens then?
Well, that's when things get really interesting. With lower insulin levels, our bodies, they can't rely on glucose as readily. They have to find a different source of energy, right?
And that's when the body turns to those fat reserves, right? Breaking them down into those fatty acids that it can then use as fuel. It's like, flipping a metabolic switch.
Exactly. And it's not just insulin that plays a role. There's also growth hormone. Fasting actually leads to a surge in growth hormone.
Oh, interesting. I know growth hormone is important for, well, growth, but how does that tie into IF and weight loss?
Well, growth hormone helps to stimulate muscle growth, and it also enhances fat breakdown. So by increasing growth hormone levels, IF can actually help you build muscle while you're losing fat.
So it's not just about losing weight, it's about like changing your body composition. That's pretty amazing. What else is going on hormonally when we fast?
Another really fascinating process is autophagy.
We touched on that a little bit in the last part, but I'd love to hear more. What exactly is happening in our bodies during autophagy?
So think of autophagy as like your body's built-in recycling system. When you fast, your cells start to break down and recycle old or damaged proteins and other cellular components.
So our bodies are doing a deep clean, getting rid of the junk.
Exactly. And this cellular cleaning has some pretty remarkable benefits. Autophagy is linked to reducing inflammation, boosting the immune system, even protecting against age-related diseases.
Wow. So it's not just about like looking good on the outside. It's about really like improving our health on a deep cellular level. That's powerful stuff. I'm sure some people are wondering about the practicality of all this, though.
Yeah, and one of the biggest concerns I hear is about like feeling hungry or deprived during those fasting periods. But you have to remember that our bodies are incredibly adaptable.
So we can actually retrain our hunger cues.
Precisely. When you fast regularly, your hunger hormones, they actually adjust. You start to feel less hungry over time. And plus, remember those tips we talked about, like staying hydrated, focusing on those nutrient-rich foods during your eating window? It can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's about setting yourself up for success and making sure you're giving your body what it needs. What about people with certain health conditions? Is intermittent fasting safe for everyone?
That's a really important question. While IF can be incredibly beneficial for a lot of people, it's not for everyone. People with certain medical conditions like diabetes, eating disorders, pregnant or breastfeeding women should definitely consult with their doctor before trying it.
Yeah, always best to get personalized advice from a healthcare professional. Let's talk a little bit about the different IF methods. How can people kind of figure out which method is right for them?
I think experimentation is key. You really want to find a method that fits your lifestyle and preferences. The 168 method is often a great place to start because it's relatively easy to incorporate into a typical day.
Yeah, just skipping breakfast and having your first meal around noon can do the trick. But what about those other methods? When might those be a better fit?
Well, the 5.2 method, where you restrict calories 2 days a week, that might appeal to people who want more flexibility in their eating schedule. And then there's alternate day fasting,
Right.
which, as the name suggests, it involves alternating between a fasting day and an eating day.
That sounds intense. Who would you recommend that one for?
It is definitely more of an advanced approach. It might be suitable for people who have experience with other IF methods, and maybe they're looking for more significant weight loss or trying to break through a plateau. It's not for beginners.
I see. So it's really about finding that right level of challenge for yourself and something that you can stick with. What about people who are into fitness? How does IF play into working out and achieving fitness goals?
Ah, that's where things get really interesting. Timing your workouts around your fasting and eating windows can actually make a big difference in your results.
So what's like the ideal scenario? When should you work out?
A lot of people find success working out towards the end of their fasting period. And that's because your insulin levels are low, which can help maximize fat burning during your workout.
So your body's primed to use those fat stores for energy when you exercise in a fasted state. What about after the workout?
Breaking your fast with a nice nutritious meal after a workout is great because it can help replenish those energy stores and support muscle recovery.
It's like a perfectly synchronized dance between fasting, working out, and eating. But what about those who maybe aren't gym rats? Can they still benefit from IF even if they don't exercise regularly?
Absolutely. Remember, IF is about so much more than just weight loss or fitness goals. It's really about improving your overall health and well-being.
It's about feeling your best, regardless of your fitness level. But let's be real, life happens. What about those times when we slip up or that fasting schedule gets disrupted?
Don't worry about it. That's totally normal. Intermittent fasting is a lifestyle. It's not a strict regimen. The key is to just be flexible and get back on track as soon as you can.
It's about progress, not perfection. And that's a message we all need to hear sometimes. This has been so insightful. I feel like I'm starting to really understand all the nuances of IF.
It's been great diving deep into the science with you.
And listeners, get ready for part 3, where we'll be debunking some common myths about IF and answering some of those questions that we haven't covered yet. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on intermittent fasting. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the basics, different methods, even kind of peeked behind the curtain at like the science of it all. But before we wrap up, I'm really curious about, some of the myths and misconceptions surrounding IF. I know there's a lot of info out there. It can be hard to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of myths circulating. I think one of the biggest ones is that it'll slow down your metabolism and you'll lose muscle mass. But as we've talked about, the research really points in the opposite direction.
Right. We talked about how it can actually boost metabolism. And, when combined with exercise, it can help build muscle. What are some other misconceptions you hear pretty often?
Another big one is that it's just a fad diet. It's not sustainable. But as we've explored, it's not about restricting what you eat. It's more about finding a pattern of eating and fasting that works for you.
Right. It's about finding that rhythm. It becomes a part of your routine. What about the idea that it's just for, extreme weight loss or people with hardcore fitness goals?
Yeah, that's definitely another myth. While IF can be really effective for weight loss, the benefits go way beyond that. We've talked about heart health, blood sugar control, longevity, even cellular repair.
Yeah, it's about, optimizing your well-being no matter where you're starting from. It seems like IF is more of a holistic approach to health than just a weight loss strategy. So before we wrap up here, do you have any like final words of wisdom for listeners who are, maybe ready to start their IF journey?
I think the most important thing is to listen to your body. Pay attention to how you feel. Adjust your approach if you need to. And don't be afraid to, experiment and find what works best for you. There's no one size fits all.
I love that. Personalizing your approach.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey. It's not a race. Be patient with yourself, celebrate the progress, and most importantly, enjoy the process,
Right.
right? You're discovering a healthier, more energized you.
Well said. This has been, wow, a really enlightening exploration of intermittent fasting. I feel so much more informed and like ready to give it a try.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed diving into this topic with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We hope you found this deep dive informative, inspiring. Remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. There's tons of info out there, and we encourage you to keep researching, keep learning.
And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, make sure to consult with your healthcare provider to make sure IF is right for you.
That's it for today's show. Until next time, stay curious and keep